Imagine the sensory input of a modern trampoline park. Flashing neon, overlapping shouting, the physical jolt of constant bouncing. For an adult, it's a headache. For a developing nervous system, it's an absolute assault. Meet Leo. He's 4 years old, and he's been at this birthday party for 2 hours. His biological circuitry is running at maximum capacity just to process the room. Then comes the tipping point. Another child grabs a blue plastic cup that Leo wanted. To us, it's a cup. To Leo's overloaded system, it is a catastrophic loss of control. The reaction is immediate and intensely physical. He throws his pizza on the floor. He covers his ears. He starts wailing in a pitch that cuts through the noise of the entire facility. The adults try their standard playbook. They tell him to use his words. They promise him a different cup. They demand that he calm down right now. None of it registers. Negotiating with a screaming 4-year-old fails because it assumes the child is making a behavioral choice. A meltdown is a biological hijack. We can think of the human brain as a 2-story house. The downstairs brain handles primitive survival instincts and intense emotions. The upstairs brain manages logic, empathy, and reasoning. In Leo's case, the sensory environment and the conflict over the cup triggered a false survival alarm. His downstairs brain expands, blocking access to his upstairs logic centers. Psychiatrist Dr. Daniel Siegel maps this invisible state using a concept called the wheel of awareness. Right now, Leo is trapped on the rim. His mind is consumed by single, overwhelming inputs: loud noise, the missing cup, and anger. The goal is to help Leo navigate back to the hub, the peaceful center where he can process his environment safely. Leo doesn't need a timeout. He needs directions. He needs an adult to act as his guide back to the center. This is where Leo's dad, Mark, steps in. He recognizes that arguing about a blue cup with a child whose logic center is offline is a waste of time. Mark picks Leo up and walks out of the party, pushing through the heavy double doors into a dim, quiet, empty hallway. You cannot de-escalate a nervous system while the environment is still attacking it. The flashing lights and screaming kids were keeping Leo's survival instincts locked in the on position. Removing the sensory threat establishes physical safety. It is the mandatory prerequisite before any emotional mapping can begin. Now that they are in a quiet space, Mark can guide Leo from the chaotic rim back to the hub. To do this, they travel down specific paths called the SIFT method, which stands for sensations, images, feelings, and thoughts. They start with sensations. Mark holds Leo's hands and asks him to notice how tightly his fists are clenched and how his tummy feels twisted. For a dysregulated preschooler, physical sensations are the most accessible entry point. They're tangible. You can see and feel a clenched fist. Next are images. Mark asks Leo to describe the movie playing in his head. Leo talks about the image of the other boys snatching the cup away. Then, feelings. This relies on a concept called name it to tame it. Mark helps Leo assign specific words to the chaos, identifying that he feels mad and tired. This creates a literal neurological shift. By finding the right words, Leo is physically routing electrical activity away from his emotional downstairs brain and re-engaging the language centers in his upstairs brain. Finally, thoughts. Mark addresses the cognitive layer, Leo's belief that his entire day is ruined. With his upstairs brain back online, Leo can recognize that the party is still fun, even without the blue cup. Deconstructing Pamit into 4 separate pieces, a tight stomach, a mental image, an emotion, and a thought, strips the meltdown of its overwhelming power. Having traveled the spokes, Leo is now regulated, calm, and resting in the hub. His breathing is steady, his fists are wide open, and he is ready to go back into the party. What Mark just did is a perfect example of a serve and return interaction. Leo's distress was the serve. Mark's guided, empathetic response was the return. Guiding Leo through SIFT physically builds the child's brain architecture. Every patient return to a child's chaotic serve lays down permanent neural pathways. This chart illustrates how executive function skills build into early adulthood. Notice the steep, rapid upward curve between ages 3 and 6. This is the critical window where a child's brain develops the capacity for working memory, mental flexibility, and self-control. Navigating a meltdown is exhausting. But by doing the heavy lifting now, parents gradually transfer the burden of emotional regulation to the child's own upstairs brain. This work builds a resilient, self-regulating mind that will serve the child for a lifetime.